Live now.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the CTC meeting for the 18th of the 1st, 2017. So new time slot for us. This is an experiment. It's a bit early for people in Europe, so we'll forgive them if they're not on the ball. So we're going to hop straight into a stand-up. And Anna, you ready to speak at 6 a.m.?
Yeah, it's early, but yeah. Okay, so one thing that I did last week was I got started on trying some stuff, adding changelogs for individual items in the documentation, which is something people have been asking for a couple of times over the last year. And I think that would be pretty cool. So I'm working on that. I'll let you know when something comes around. And yeah, Bradley is next.
Hey, I'm mostly just observing here, but I looked into removing all global usage in core in the last week. Ben is next.
I was on holiday until this week, so yeah, nothing much to report. And I suppose Nikita is next.
Yes, nothing from me also. I'm catching up, just joined recently. And next is Yirma.
Miscellaneous minor stuff, I think. I'm not sure what else. Next is James.
PRs, HTTP2 and URL related stuff. Also had a couple of one-on-one conversations with a couple folks, including Todd and IBM's rep on the legal committee about the copyright stuff. Next is Brian.
Okay, so mostly more of the same, just working on looking at making various optimizations to different parts of core as usual. Other than that, just the normal reviewing PRs, commenting on issues. Next would be, I think, Rod.
Yep. So January's a bit difficult for me because I'm moving house. A lot involved in that. But I have been spending quite a bit of time on automating my scripts for collecting health metrics on the repo and also the website downloads and that kind of thing. So I'll have some things to share for that soon. Next is Saktipriyan.
This week, just mostly code reviews and discussions with few people here regarding the next meetup. That's it.
Trevor.
Hey, fixing some async hooks, edge cases with timers and all that timer weirdness, general review, and I may have a PR coming up after I get the async hooks done for a performance boost in HTTP. Next is Rich.
Usual array of test documentation and minor lib refactors and tweaks and fixes. PR review, of course, usual issue comments, and had a flurry of activity with Node.to-do getting new folks some tasks to contribute to the project. And I think that concludes our stand-up.
It does. So let's quickly run through the meeting review for last meeting. There was landing npm 4 into Node 7, which I believe happened. Console.log and util format supporting the %i integer conversion. Can someone report on the outcome of that?
Yeah, push back the issues.
Great. Jeremiah cleaning up extraneous properties on immediates. What happened there? Was that pushed to a major?
No, I haven't really paid attention to it. I think the vote is clear for it to land. I think there's enough people, but I haven't just done anything with it yet.
Okay, pull request 10116, which is adding code and warnings to deprecations, back on the agenda this week. Deprecation policy as well is back. Same with the copyright 123 issues there, which James will give us an update on by the sounds of it. Growing the group of releases, which I think is back on. Yeah, it is back on the agenda. And the ESM EPS, which Bradley is joining us this week again for. So hopping straight into it, proposal to move guides from Node.js Node to Node.js/Node.js.org. So there's some guides in the docs directory mainly. There's a guides directory, but also a topics directory. Evan is proposing, and apparently as an outcome of a discussion in the docs working group, that these be moved to the Node.js.org website. There's no negatives that I can see in that thread. Has anyone got any comments on this?
Nope. I think it's a good idea.
I still think it would be better to maintain them from core if a build pipeline actually existed to get them onto the website properly. Given that doesn't exist and probably won't be built recently in due time, then we should probably just move them. Most of them anyways. I'm not really sure what we want to do with, so we ended up in a situation, not on purpose, where we actually have guides and topics that are about stuff that users would use the APIs, and then we have stuff for internal stuff, like writing tests for core. And writing tests for core shouldn't really maybe it should be replicated onto the website, but I can imagine we'd probably want to maintain that in core.
Yeah, that's in the issue. The docs team doesn't want that stuff. They just want the user facing stuff. The stuff like you're describing about how to write tests and everything like that. They think should remain bundled with the repository. So I think everybody's on the same page there.
Yeah, the only one being suggested to move out of the guides directory is the timers in Node, which is written in a very user-facing way. The one that's in the topics directory, the one that's not suggested for moving is the domain resource cleanup example. Oh, I guess that has to go with the domain postmortem doc. So all the stuff in the topics directory probably is going to go.
Yeah, I think this is pretty non-controversial at this point, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just quickly do a quick vote here, and then we can record that. So all in favor, say aye, or do a +1 in the chat.
Aye.
Aye. All against, say no, or put a -1 in. Anyone abstaining? Okay, in that case, anyone that hasn't voted is going to be assumed to be a +1 on that. So it's passed unanimously by the group that is here.
Yeah, we're one shy of quorum.
I think we also had +1s in that issue thread, and Evan is assumed to be +1 since he proposed it.
Cool, then it's a done deal.
Yeah. Yep. No, we'll take Evan's vote there. Okay. Good. Next one is let's quickly do copyright. So I'll pull these issues together. There's 3 of them, 2 on the Node.js Node repo and 1 on the TSC repo. James, you said you've had a chat with legal committee people.
I had a chat with IBM's representative on the legal committee, and with Todd Moore, IBM's rep to the board. Basically, just to make sure that they understood what the position, the CTC has been taking on this with regards to change, with regards to what the copyright, what we'd like to see with the copyright, having the minimal header there if we have to have a header at all. that kind of thing, and getting them just making sure it's on their radar and it gets on the agenda for discussion. Todd's going to make sure that at the next board meeting it is discussed and that the PRs are looked at. So it's progress in terms of just making sure that things are moving. And and the really good thing, it was Todd that reached out. So he was aware of the PRs, and he reached out to me to get an update on where things are at. So I think it's a good sign. I did impress upon the need to try to have a decision quickly. And so
there is a board meeting. A board meeting next Monday. Yep. So that's in a few days' time.
That's on the 30th, right? So week from Monday. Yeah.
Oh right, hang on. Yeah, I'm looking in the wrong thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's basically it. What I would ask is that if anyone can look at the PRs, there are some editorial types of things that could be made. If anyone has any of those comments, any suggestions on what that header should be or changes, please get those into the PR before, preferably a few days before that board meeting, so I can make necessary changes before the board reviews it. That's it on that topic. It's pretty much just wait to see what the board says.
Okay. Okay, that's that. Next one is James is yours. I'll let you start this, which is pull request 10116, which is the adding a warning code to the emit warnings API and output, and also the option to shunt that to a file as output. So do you want to tell us on the status of this? It's been floating around for a little while.
Yeah, status of this is just still waiting on reviews. It is a Semver major, so it does require 2 CTC members to sign off at least. Just waiting on getting that sign off. So there's really nothing to discuss here unless anyone has any objections to it. I think everything else can be handled in GitHub. I just would really like to see it settled, one way or the other. So, because it has been up there for a while.
So
if take it off the agenda.
Oh, okay. I was going to say if you have trouble getting the votes in there to get that landed, then do feel free to set a date for that.
Yeah. Let's say if we don't have the reviews by next week, let's call for a vote.
Okay, so if you haven't reviewed that one, please go ahead and do so. Which is 10116. There's a fair bit in there, but it's worth looking at. The next one is pull request 7964. We're going back to the sevens. Deprecation policy. Finally, James, where are we at with this one as well?
Again, just looking for a review on this. But so far, I did update it based on more recent conversations. I think I updated it like early last week or the week before. It does make a couple of significant changes, namely docs only deprecations would be allowed as Semver minors, since those have no runtime impact. And there are a few other clarifications there, so we just need to make sure everyone is comfortable with those changes. And if they are, please weigh in. I don't want to rush it. I want to make sure that everyone is okay with that because it is a policy change. But it would be good to get some reviews and get folks weighing in on it. So.
James, can I request that in the original post you update that and include really simple dot points of the major changes in there? including what you said about docs only in Zenvo Minor, and anything else that is major, just to help people grok it without having to dive into the detail.
Yeah, I'll try to do that either tonight or first thing in the morning.
Okay, this next one, Bradley wanted a quick discussion on this, which was pull request 10135 from last year, which is it's called lib be robust when process global is clobbered. So Bradley's been doing some work on freezing globals. Bradley, do you want to tell us what?
So yeah, basically the concept of this pull request is, right now we access the global process in various places inside of core, and if somebody overwrites process with null, core can crash in unexpected ways. And so this PR does two things. One is it makes it so there's no actual access to the global process property. It instead introduces a closured process variable that's safe to use. And it does that by changing module wrapper. The other thing it does is it changes the property descriptor on the global process so that it's non-writable, which myself and Eljar point out is kind of an odd thing to do. There's a fairly sizable amount of globals used in core that we aren't having the same sort of robust feature of not crashing when somebody, for example, sets the global error constructor to null. And so I'm basically wanting to know, why just process? There are other globals that are in higher use than process.
Was that a question for me or in general?
In general, like what are we trying to be robust for? Are we trying to be robust against people editing the global namespace, or are we trying to be robust that core shouldn't rely on any globals? This PR has a sort of conflict by doing both.
So ideally, core would not be using globals at all. We'd have our own reference to, for example, object, array, date, what have you, and process, of course. But that's a pretty big step to take. So my original pull, the original pull requests took a small step of just capturing over process. So removing the use of the process global inside core. And then Sam requested that I also, let me get this straight, that I made it non-writable. That's in the second commit. I think that's the bit you're taking exception to. Am I right?
Correct. We have 43 globals that we access in lib, just raw globals, not prototype properties. And so only locking down that one, which is used one of the least compared to things like string or error, is a little weird. It's also problematic for people like Eljarb, who does a lot of polyfills if we start doing that to all the different ones. Basically, I just want to figure out, should we be setting all these to non-writable, or can we leave them alone?
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy dropping the second commit. I'm not married to it. Like I said, I implemented it because Sam requested it.
That sounds fine to me too.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
I mean, I don't think I would make like regular like language globals non-writable. I don't really think it's our business to like mess with those in that way. I guess process is kind of our thing. So like maybe we could decide to lock it down sort of on our own right in that way, but I don't really know why we would that much. I mean, most people don't require process. This is kind of like a same issue with the buffer constructor. That well, yeah, that it's a global. So if someone overwrites that, like, I mean, you're gonna have I don't know how many node modules that might like crash anyways.
But the same is true for error and all these other things. I don't see why process would be an exception.
It looks like in the GitHub issue, Sam, who was the one who asked for it, also came around and said he would be fine without it as well. So
Yeah,
it sounds like
it
we have
seems like
resolution on this one.
seems like two separate issues here, so maybe they should be separate pull requests because the first one doesn't seem very controversial. The second one is the first commit. I mean,
Yeah, it sounds like that's the resolution here.
you okay with that, Ben?
Yeah, sure.
Bradley?
Sounds good.
Okay, take it back to GitHub then. Okay, I'll jot some notes in here. The next one was issue number 190 on the TSC repo, which was a request by the post-mortem, or was it debugging working group? No, we don't have debugging. We have
Diagnostics.
Diagnostics. To bring Node-inspect under the foundation. So for clarity, this is not Node-inspector. Node-inspect, which is a implementation of the debugger using the V8 inspector protocol. So it's like re-implementing Node's debugger, but using the new stuff. And so the request here is to bring the request here is simply to bring that project in under the Node.js repo into the foundation. What the next steps are, I think, that's something to be dealt with separately, which might include bringing it into core, but that's a separate discussion. This is simply to bring the project in as a alternative debugger to our debugger that's likely going away soon. The TSC said, yep, that's fine, given that the CTC is fine about it. So that's the only thing stopping it is the TSC is fine as long as the CTC wants this. So it needs CTC votes for this to happen. Anyone have any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Well, let's do a quick vote here and we'll record those votes on the issue. So all those in favor of adopting this project under the foundation. Oh, actually, before we do that, I should note that pulling in existing projects into the foundation is something that the TSC has said that we would interact with the board on if it changes the scope of the work that we do. We don't feel that this project does change the scope of our work since it already fits under what we're doing. It's basically a re-implementation of the existing debugger. So, but we will inform the board anyway if this gets brought in. So all those in favor, please say aye or drop a +1 into the chat.
I have one quick question. In the other Node-inspect issue, I don't know if it was me or someone else, but the question was, how are we going to do the integration with Node-inspect? Has that been answered yet?
The integration, I don't know if anyone has got a concrete proposal on there.
No, I believe that's still an open question. Whether you mean whether this will ship alongside or whether it will be more tightly integrated, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even ship at all. It might users might be required to npm install it or whatever. Yeah, there's no resolution on that at this time. As far as I know, if anybody knows differently. please speak up.
So
But
There's
it's up in
people
the
that
air.
have opinions about it.
yeah, so like in the pull request that is open for Node Core, where Node Inspect is added, I suggested that we can include it in the Node binary itself, and that's the current state of the pull request. Like it would not be. I don't think it would be installed separately. Just be integrated into the binary.
Right. I guess all I'm trying to say is this vote has no that has no position on that. I guess if that makes any sense.
Okay, that perfectly fine. I'm a +1, so let's get this thing moving.
Cool. So it should be noted that it's pretty nice code. Somebody actually cares about the debugger, unlike the rest of us, which is great. Somebody did mention that there's it's very promise heavy in there, but my view on that is that if somebody's willing to love this thing, then they get to decide that kind of stuff. So
serious shout out to Jan on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great work actually. There's quality stuff in here. So okay, +1's in the side panel there. If you object, please -1 or speak up. Abstaining gives a ±0 or speak up. Okay, it's assumed that it's passed the group here. So how many?
Had 3, and one of those was me. This will be 12 total if everybody here voted yes.
Yeah. 12 total,
which is more than enough.
Right. Okay, I'm catching up with notes here. I'm quite behind. So I'm going to pass the next one on to Bradley, which is the EP for ESM. Bradley, what's the status of that?
Mostly we're down to one final question, which is, do we want to implement a sync loader or async loader? I have some slides, but we should probably schedule a separate meeting for that. For now, I'm just wanting to be sure that we're still okay with everything in the rewrite on pull request number 39, except for the asynchronous bit right now, because that's still to be determined. So,
I'm not
notable
sure. I'll
things.
need to take a look again.
What?
Sorry, go on.
The notable things are mostly shared between the accepted draft and the rewrite. Things like removing deprecated stuff like node path, continuing to have matching resolution algorithm, except I think the rewrite one actually explicitly states that we're using URLs. If not, I can go and fix that. We'll be doing single default value for CommonJS, snapshotted it into vval, and that's it. With a synchronous loader, that means a temporal dead zone. With an asynchronous loader, I'm not sure you can ever actually get to a dead zone. I don't think you can. But that has other implications. As for people actually going out and starting to use modules in the wild, Safari now has it unflagged. IE is about to unflag. Chrome isn't unflagged yet. That's probably not going to go until beginning of March, I think, or April. So we're starting to see them out in the wild. People are continuing to use the .js file extension, which may be a little bit bumpy for us if we do a new file extension. But we have on the agenda for TC39 this month discussing the grammar change, but it looks doubtful after reading and talking to people about the meeting in November. So,
which grammar change is that?
Making it so a source text cannot parse in both script and module mode.
Right.
Unambiguous.
Yeah. One of the complaints was kind of interesting in November, which was, what if they bring import to scripts? So, a little interesting. There's a ton of notes on the TC39 notes repo if you want to see where Dave Herman discusses proposing that TC39 come to the node group and suggest the use module pragma. And so that got stage 1 in the TC39 process in November.
Wait, I thought that like wasn't possible.
It is complicated. It's not a choice that we can do, because you can still get into odd situations with it for us. It would be optional is the main problem. It would just mark a source text as only being parsable in module mode. But it being optional means basically Node would be degraded to a second-class citizen. So that's not really for us.
Sorry, how do you make that claim that we become second class?
Because we cannot consume ES modules the same way the browsers can. We have extra fluff every time.
Because use module would be optional for browsers, but mandatory for us.
Yes. There are also some other complications with build tooling that have been discussed at length. You need a full JavaScript parser in order to actually figure out if it's on or off, because you can insert random things, different comment types, have it not be the first thing, so you could technically do use asm, then use module right after it, and things like that. It's not super simple.
So what's the way ahead for us here? Are we just do we just need to sit back and wait and see how it evolves, or do we need to think about action?
It's just we choose at this point. We're gonna talk to them and see about the grammar change in January, and then after that we just choose.
Okay. So grammar change in yeah, okay. So we'll wait for outcome of grammar change discussion.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
What I suspect, I mean, it's going to end up being discussed likely fairly extensively at the upcoming TC39 meeting. This is kind of where things are at, and I'm sure a lot of this will come up and be discussed. It's just a lot of things we just kind of need to figure out what we're going to do given the current state of things.
James, are you going to be at that TC39?
Yeah, that's the plan.
We have other people going too, right?
Yeah, I think Miles was thinking about showing up. Anna, are you gonna be there?
I'm gonna be there. Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, that's right. We approved funding, didn't we?
And of course, Bradley will be there, obviously.
So Miles might be there as well.
Yeah, he's thinking about something. Yeah. He's gonna be in the area.
So that I think that leaves us with either 4 to 5 people, because Franziska's going to be there too. She said. It's pretty good.
Cool.
So yeah, there are just 2 pending items really. CTC choosing sync versus async loader, and that's purely on us. And then the other is TC39 going forward with changing grammar or not going forward. And then if they go forward, we'll take that route. If they don't go forward, we're probably going to just only have the file extension, unless we want to try to like sort through the many edge cases we saw in the past.
Okay, so with regard to the sync versus async loader, that seems like a fairly discrete thing to be able to discuss. How do we enter into that discussion, like through all of the stuff that's going on? Is there somewhere can you give us a link to somewhere where we can look at that?
I was going to figure that out this meeting.
Oh, okay.
Last meeting, we said we're going to set up a meeting purely for that, and it'll probably just be me sending out slides ahead of time. There's not too much to actually read on it. It's just like a few edge cases and what happens. And then just thinking about how that differs from Babel and things like that.
Okay.
Bradley, was that the meeting I was supposed to set up and then totally zoned on and didn't set up?
I figured you were just doing something, and because you said
I just
2 weeks, so
yeah. I apologize on that. Did you move forward on getting something set up?
I've got slides, so I've got that.
Okay. I'm making myself a note right now to make sure I remember in the morning. I'll get that set up. I do apologize.
So probably sometime at the end of this week, we'll have it set up, hopefully.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Be good to be on top of this rather than just let it slip out from underneath us. Another issue we probably want to be on top of at some point, not too distant future, is WASM. Just so that we are aware of the impact on Node and how we want to interact with it. But that's for another time, probably. So let's move on. The last item on our agenda is issue number 48 in the CTC repo, which is growing the number of releases in the people authorized release group. So the note here is that it's not limited to CTC members, that it's actually open to collaborators. So the CTC just needs to authorize this. And currently there are two people up, which is Italio Casas and Gibson, whatever his surname is, from IBM. And there's enough there's votes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So we just need some more votes in that issue. 7 people. So how about we just collect votes here, and then we can add them to the list. So
this is just specifically a vote to extend an invitation to Italo and Gibson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless there's a reason to separate them out, let's just do a vote on both of them at once. So all those in favour, please give a +1 or say something.
Aye.
Anyone against, please let it be known. And anyone abstaining? Okay, that's everyone here is assumed to be +1 then. So Rich, have you got that handy? Are you able to figure out the discrete individuals that have voted?
Yeah, I'm typing in the issue right now. I'll take care of it.
Fantastic. Seems like that's enough to pass. Great. Okay, they'll need to shadow somebody that does release next. Figure that out, but I'm sure that won't be hard. Good. Okay, any other items before we move on to a Q&A time? Nope. Okay, so that's the end of our formal part of the meeting. We're going to. Do we have anybody listening to the stream, Jeremiah?
Yeah, just a couple of people.
Okay, so if there's anyone that has any questions or comments listening live, please let them in. Let them drop them into the YouTube comments or in some other way where you can get in contact with one of us. We'll wait a minute just to allow for lag.
Someone says the new time is awesome for Australians.
Yeah. Okay, so upcoming meetings. We only so far have on the issue the CTC. Oh, there's a diagnostics working group meeting coming up in 2 days, or well, actually, I don't even know if that's might be 3 days, depending on where you are. So that's on in the US time. It will be Thursday. You can see you can go to we've got a calendar for all our meetings. If you look in the minutes for this meeting, you can see a link there. I think the link is scattered around, or contact one of us if you want the calendar link. What else do we have coming up in the next week? We've got CTC meeting next week and PSC meeting next week. Aside from that, I don't see anything else in the calendar. So fairly low-key week.
I think we're going to try to have a HTTP2 meeting next week. Just haven't been scheduled yet.
Great. There's lots of activity there and lots of interest in that. So make sure that gets onto the calendar. Okay, any other business before we shut it down? No? Okay, thanks everyone for participating. Thanks everyone for listening in. And see you all next week, hopefully. Bye.
See ya.